have to talk about getting some kind of sound amplifier.
Yes, that's come up before.
We're all set? Okay. Good evening and welcome to the December 11, 2017 Board of Education meeting. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to first welcome to his first televised meeting new board member Vincent Baglio, sitting to my left, your right. He was administered the oath of office at the last workshop meeting and was just unable to be here at the first meeting in November, so I want to welcome you and
Thank you.
Look forward to your service on the board. There are two sets of minutes to review and approve if appropriate. November 13, 2017 regular meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments, changes, corrections, clarifications? All right, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. And November 27, 2017 workshop meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Second.
Any changes, corrections, clarifications? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Item 4 on the agenda is public forum for topics on the board agenda. Anybody? No takers at this point? All right. Item 5. That is me. We did talk about this in some detail in the Operations Committee meeting, reviewing all of the check payment requests and had some good discussions about them. The total expenditures for the month were $4,691,520.53. Basically on track in terms of the budget. About half of that is salaries and about half of that is other things. So I would, in light of our discussion at the operations meeting, I would move that we approve expenditures for the month of November in that amount.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Item 6, communications. I think we probably all have had some emails on the start time issue. Anything other than that? Because we're going to talk about that I know a little bit later.
Correct.
Anything other? Anything else? No? Okay. So then item 7, let's go to student reps. There's 2 of you here, so.
Okay, so from Calvin Leet, the Cardboard Challenge was held on November 20th. Students developed a variety of games and projects that demonstrated their creativity and sense of fun. 4th graders recently displayed their science knowledge and engineering practices as they presented their water fair projects. The 4th graders worked collaboratively to develop their ideas and hypotheses, designed experiments or research topics, and presented the results. The projects included a water-powered car and water filters. Also, LEAD students are currently involved with the Hour of Code. They're learning some of the building blocks of computer programming through online applications and iPad apps. From A.W. Cox, they had their book fair on the 6th, 7th, and 8th of December. And December is the Compassion Challenge month, and student and staff are participating in daily challenges such as giving a compliment and speaking mindfully. Lastly, 3rd graders have been working on their ocean animal reports. And from Baldwin, last Monday and Tuesday, Baldwin students participated also in the Hour of Code. The 6th grade chorus was visited by a Yale a cappella group last Friday and had a workshop with the group. On December 7th, the first half of the 6th grade the first half of the 6th graders enjoyed the Boston Science Museum. The second half will go in January. GHS Voices will be performing at Baldwin on December 19th, which is one of the Baldwin students' favorites events. And Coco Cafe will be hosted on December 22nd with performances from the band and strings program.
Okay. And at Melissa Jones, the 3rd graders are sharing their marine animal reports with their families next week, where they each chose an animal to study and learn about their environment, and so they'll be sharing it with their friends and families next week. The kindergartners are learning about economics, and they are doing so by having tickets and stimulating a shopping event and learning why they should buy certain things and why having the practice of good economics is important. Also, the Student Council is collecting money for the Guilford Youth and Family Service Teen Youth Drive. GHS Voices will perform for the entire school next Tuesday. And the staff and students will all join in for the winter sing-along, which everyone's invited to come along and join them for. At Guilford Lakes, the annual holiday sing-along will take place on Friday at 2 o'clock, and the PTO is doing the giving tree again, and they have adopted a school from East Haven.
From the high school, we had our first pep rally of the year on November 21st, and it got everybody excited for the football game against Hand the following day. And there will be another pep rally on December 22nd, and we're hoping for similar success. Through the first quarter, IB is going very well. We had our first extended essay meeting last week, and we have another one coming up this Friday. The extended essay is a student-led research paper at the core of the diploma program. Dr. Keene, Dr. Freeman, and Mr. Macenti have been through and have been trained as supervisors for the extended essay. And there was also an informational meeting for the students and parents K through 9th grade for IB, which was very exciting to see the outreach of IB and just getting people prepared for coming into the high school and the program.
Okay, also at GHS, the Later Start Time Task Force has been meeting, and that's going really well, and they're identifying problems and looking for solutions in order to start implementing the later start time as whenever possible. Also, the tree lighting concert this weekend, 2 weekends ago, went really well, and there were 4 concerts, and the entire green was lit up, and the students were really excited about that. And also, sports will be starting soon, or have already started, actually, sorry. The winter sports have started, and boys hockey and fencing especially are really looking forward to this season, especially after such a great season last year. And for Adams, the Adams Students Council and 7th grade social studies held a very successful student volleyball tournament in which 13 teams of 6-person teams participated for $30, and the money raised is going to the Water for South Sudan Giraffe Challenge, the Iron Giraffe Challenge. And so far they've raised over $600. And they've also had a staff versus student volleyball game in which the students won. And also they're doing the Toys for Tots drive, which is completely in full swing right now. And they are looking forward again to donating hundreds of toys as they do each year. The holiday concerts also started with 10 groups performing for local businesses during the tree lighting concert. And there will be a concert on the 13th for orchestra and on the 19th for chorus. And the entire Adams School celebrated the 80th birthday of their building this past week, and they had a school-wide assembly with multiple guest speakers. Yeah.
That's everything.
Terrific, thank you.
That's all thought.
Boy,
Nice
yeah.
job.
Good work. Good work.
So what does that mean? What is it that you are with respect to IB?
So all IB students are required as part of their diploma program to complete an extended essay, and each student working on an extended essay is assigned a faculty advisor. And so Mr. Macenti and Dr. Keene and I will be working along with other IB-trained teachers here in the building as faculty advisors for students as they work on their extended essays.
Great.
Couldn't be happier.
Neat. Terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions of the student reps? Okay, then I guess you can either stick around or go do homework. What do you want to do? I think Mr. Macenti is in the back. I think he's going to vote on the homework.
Yeah.
All right, Dr. Freeman.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Freeman, your turn.
Yeah. So we did want to begin tonight by updating you on a band field trip that was approved by this board last year, I believe, but we did want to bring it to your attention and let you know what steps we're taking. Over April vacation, April 13th through 21st, the Guilford High School Wind Ensemble and Symphony Orchestra has planned a trip that will take them to Spain, and in fact specifically into Barcelona for this year's annual tour. Mr. Gom and Mr. Boats have been working very carefully with the tour companies. As you know, there is a little bit of political unrest in Catalonia right now, and so we want to let you know about what steps we've taken and what our plans are for this trip moving forward. And again, I really want to give Mr. Gom and Mr. Boats an enormous amount of credit for the work that they have put into this. It is our understanding that there is going to be an important election that will take place on the 21st of this month. We will hold off and watch what the results of that election are and watch what the response to that election is. At this time, the tour company has provided us with 3 alternate itineraries. The first is the original itinerary that, in fact, has the students arriving in Barcelona Airport and spending most of their time directly in Barcelona. The tour company has provided us with a secondary itinerary. We still fly into Barcelona Airport. We still spend all of our time in Catalan, specifically on the Costa Brava, but with no time directly in Barcelona itself. None of the tours, none of the venues would be scheduled in Barcelona itself. The third option, while we still are required to fly into Barcelona Airport, moves the concert tour to Valencia, all of which is outside of Catalonia itself. So none of the tour would take place inside Catalonia itself. A cutoff date for complete reimbursement is also December 21st. And so the plan that we have laid out is that Mr. Gom is going to communicate with families this week and let them know that we still intend to go forward with a trip into Spain this year in following one of these 3 itineraries. Any parent who is completely uncomfortable with that decision and with the financial attachment that comes with that must withdraw their child by December 21st in order to get a full reimbursement of the monies that they've invested. What we plan to do is after the election, shortly after that, after we can gauge the response, is we will settle into one of those 3 itineraries, and then we have secured an insurance package that goes along with the decision that up until 48 hours before travel, any family will receive 75% back for cancellation for any reason. So the communication to parents is going to say, at this time, we still plan to go forward. There will be one of 3 itineraries, and we're going to make the best, most reasonable decision that we can make, but also remind families that this is a little less certain than any other trip that we've taken in the past. And if, up until the 48-hour window before we travel, for instance, there is a travel advisory issued from the State Department, if Mr. Macenti or I have reason to believe that this is no longer a responsible decision, that we could cancel the trip right up until that 48-hour window. So parents who choose to stay in after the 21st need to recognize that they're accepting a liability of 25% of the cost that they've invested. So we have that insurance plan in place. We have the cutoff date of 48 hours before the trip, ultimately. We have a second cutoff date of December 21st for complete reimbursement, and we have 3 scaled itineraries, of which we will choose the one that we feel is the most appropriate. We're here informing you of that plan tonight. Mr. Gom will inform all of the families involved, reiterating the cost liability that they're assuming if they choose to stay in. And then Mr. Macenti and I, along with Mr. Gom and Mr. Boats, will continue to monitor. This is an annual opportunity that we offer. We've got no more experienced staff in travels and plans like this. This is the single most successful relationship with a tour company that we've had. So we expect this trip to take place, but wanted to make sure that we addressed the concerns, wanted you to know that we're paying attention to the political situation and that we have a number of contingencies in place at this time.
Questions, comments?
I just want to make one comment as a parent of a child going on the trip. Although this piece of it is new news, Mr. Gom and Mr. Boats have been very forthcoming in communications and information as this has unfolded over the last few months. which has been extremely helpful as a parent. So truly kudos to them as they think about it, as they consider insurance, as all that kind of stuff. They have just continually kept us informed. So again, this piece will be new because it's just been generated, but it's been very helpful as a parent.
Yeah,
I have to say, definitely kudos to them.
All of the information that I just shared with you will be going out to every parent who is currently signed up later this week. So that information will go out, giving people, I think, ample time before that December 21st decision point needs to be made.
Have any parents expressed concerns before receiving this information?
There have been questions raised. There's only, to my knowledge, only one parent who has said that the contingencies don't seem to be, just doesn't want her child traveling to Spain at this time. So not significant numbers, but a lot of people asking questions. And again, Mr. Boats and Mr. Gom have been really responsive to those questions. They have confidence that the trip is going to go off. And again, they also realize that should the situation change dramatically, a decision will be made at the administrative level, and we'll address it, again, right up to 48 hours before liftoff if necessary.
Okay, good. Any other questions about that? Okay. Budget process? We're deep into the budget process.
We are deep into the budget process at this time internally. We have met, Mr. Bowden, Mrs. Trudeau, and I, and Dr. Keene, have met with all of the building level leaders, all of the department heads. We have collected all of that information. We are currently working on all staffing projections. We will have a first administrative draft of a budget that we will be able to deliver to all of you in its complete form by January 4th. And we will be making the first public presentation of that administrative draft budget in this room at your regular meeting on January 8th.
And then the budget meetings and the public forums, just so people can make a note of it, January 22nd, 2018 at 7:30 in the Adams Chorus Room, and the next night, January 23rd, Tuesday, also in the Adams Chorus Room.
Both of which happen after I deliver our draft administrative budget, but before you as a board take any action. So a good opportunity for the community to be involved.
Excuse me, and okay.
And also wanted to update the board. Following one of your most recent public meetings, we have established a task force, an informal group that is meeting to discuss the opportunities around changing school start times, to talk about the research, to talk about the logistics around that. The task force is made up of 3 student representatives, in fact, the student reps to this Board of Education. There are 3 interested parents and community members who sit on that task force. There are 3 members of the high school faculty, one of which is Mr. Macenti, and then 2 teachers from the high school faculty, including our GEA Association president. There are 3 current or recently passed Board of Education representatives. So Mrs. Cohen and Mr. Baglio sit on it, and Dr. Moore has agreed to chair this task force. And then I sit on this group as well. So we've met 3 times to date. I think the most beneficial meeting is that we were able to invite Dr. Joe Arardi. Joe is the immediate past superintendent in Newtown Schools, which is the most recent school in Connecticut to shift their high school start times. And I think Joe spent more than 2 hours with us and talked to us about the work that Newtown did and the way Newtown approached these questions. We asked him a lot of detailed questions. We talked a lot about teacher contract and school calendar and bus schedules, and I think Joe's time with us was incredibly helpful. As Dorcas mentioned, we don't have any recommendations at this time. We're still talking about the research. We're talking about the challenges. We meet again tomorrow at 6 p.m. We're meeting here in the high school, and we plan on meeting every Tuesday up until the winter break, and then a more relaxed schedule following the winter break when we return, but continuing to meet through the year. It's been an engaging conversation. I can't tell you that we've solved this particular puzzle yet, but we're having good conversations.
Okay, questions about that? Comments?
I guess I'll also note that as one component of that, We have relaunched the district website on school start times. So if you go to our school website, there is a quick link on the left with the title School Start Times. That will take you to some resources, which includes a fairly recent TED Talk. There was a TED Talk on this topic that came out about a year ago. The RAND Corporation study, the recommendations from the American Academy of Pediatrics, as well as the minutes from our task force meetings will all be documented in that section of the website. And members of the committee and I have begun joining and scheduling meetings in the community. So just last week, I was with the High School Connections group. That is the high school version of the PTO. We met in this room and talked for about 90 minutes on the topic. It was an interesting room, and there was no consensus in the room. There were some people who thought it was a great idea and it should start tomorrow, and there were others who had real reservations about the topic. But again, I thought it was a really rich conversation. Dr. Kanapari, who is a member of the task force, he is a parent who has spoken in front of this board on this topic. He's also the director of the Pediatric Sleep Center at Yale. Dr. Kanapari and I are scheduling opportunities to speak with the high school faculty, with a representative group of student leaders here from the high school, and we're reaching out to invite the leadership of all of the youth athletic programs in town. And these are conversations where we want to touch on the research, we want to share the fact that the district is interested in this, and we want to spend as much time listening as we do talking. And so, similar to the meeting here, hoping to hear what people's interests, concerns, and worries are on the topic and engage in some conversation around those concerns, and take that information in so that it'll be folded into the recommendation, any recommendation that the task force puts together for this board. We are acutely aware of the fact that any recommendation that would include financial obligations needs to make it to this board by January or February at the latest. And so that's the reason for the weekly meetings front-loaded. And then once this board begins to get into budget deliberations, it is in one way or another going to change the work of the task force, either because there's something built into a budget proposal that is going to be a little concrete, or it isn't, and therefore the committee has to be looking at either totally cost-neutral options or a different timeline. But again, we're acutely aware of the timeline that you face for budget deliberation and preparation.
Does it make sense for this task force to visit with the people in Greenwich?
We were reaching out to them as well. Joe was the one that did it most recently, Dr. Arardi. But yes, we've put inquiries out to Greenwich, Ridgefield. We've looked at the work going on in Rhode Island. Yeah, we're trying to take a look at everything.
I believe Ridgefield has made a decision, but it's going to be a phased-in process.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
They're going to wait a year, and then it'll be the following year. So.
And just to be totally transparent, we've talked with Dr. Arardi, who put the package together, but has not been in Newtown since August. So we're also reaching out to people who are still in Newtown and implementing, because Joe had some questions about implementation, whether there are going to be additional bus ads after the fact and how it's been rolling out. And he's a little distant now, so we're going to talk to the folks who are on the ground as that rollout occurs.
Good.
Any other questions, comments? Okay.
And then it's not on the agenda, but I did just want to thank the board for the half a day that you all put in on Saturday. I thought that our retreat with Mary Broderick was useful. It was a good conversation. I enjoyed the time. I hope that you all did as well.
Circling back to the budget, I just wanted to update everybody on the town and the board together anticipated a reduction of approximately $1 million in ECS money from the state for the current fiscal year, and that actually did not happen. The first cut of the budget that was passed by the General Assembly was reduced it by $200,000 down to $800,000. And I'm being general right now, but in the area of $800,000. Well, now the governor has imposed some additional, what do they call lapses? I think is what they're calling them. In the approximate additional amount of $200,000. So we are still to the positive of $600,000 in terms of where we anticipated being, and so And I don't think there's, I mean, I don't know. I guess I shouldn't say that it can't change again, but I think it can change again. But this is a good example of one of the challenges that we face in the budgeting process is, we're halfway through the fiscal year and we are still have a moving number in terms of what our state aid is going to be. So this, I think as we go into next year's budget, we should keep this in mind. And
Well, and I do think, isn't there some recent chatter about the fact that the shortfall now has hit the statutory
Right.
trigger so that the governor will be identifying further cuts for this year?
it's not the governor. It goes to the General Assembly because it's more than 1%. And the General Assembly has not shown much appetite to reducing municipal aid. Reflected
Unlike
in
the
what
governor.
happened. Unlike, well, I mean, we can get into a debate about whether that was a bargaining position or whether that was
Right.
real. But in any event, the bottom line is and I think our delegation, I think all three, Representative Candelora, Representative Scanlon, and Senator Kennedy, I think worked real hard to make it clear that a budget was not going to pass without the cooperation of districts like ours, and that the mood was not positive to pass a budget that had no state aid for towns like ours. So it was a cooperative, it ultimately worked out to be a cooperative process, and we did fine. And so hopefully we can continue that way. And I just wanted to mention that because we'd talked about the original $200,000 reduction. I just wanted to mention the additional $200,000 approximate.
The way that we approached it locally turned out to very much be the right way to approach it locally.
That's absolutely correct.
Yep.
And we could have done nothing, in which case you'd be explaining how we're going to fill a $400,000 hole
Yep.
in the budget, or we could have run around and acted as if the sky was going to fall, and then
And
we
be
would have
dealing
laid
with
off a bunch.
reduced services.
Right,
this
we would have
year.
laid off a bunch of teachers, and then we'd
Yep.
say, oops, now we have money that could have been used to save those teachers. So, so far fine. Anything else from you?
That concludes my report.
Okay. Board agenda, first is to act on, if we're ready to act on it, the proposed school calendar that is in your packets. Effectively the same form as years past, I think. Are we right?
It's essentially a vanilla calendar this year. It hits all of the elements that we've hit in past years, and it's a fairly straightforward year where there's nothing unusual. The pieces fall into place, in large part driven by the cooperative regional calendar.
Okay, is there a motion to approve, and we can have discussion about it, obviously, or questions, but is there a motion to approve this calendar?
So moved.
Second, okay. Questions, comments? Well, if everybody's comfortable with it, I think it basically does follow the model that we've been on the last couple of years. It seems to be working, I think.
We discussed it last month when we had this as a receive item briefly, too.
Right.
Yeah.
And we did spend some time talking about the professional development days, early release days, and the placement of vacation weeks or extended weekends. Yep.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
9.2 is to act on the 2018 Board of Education meeting calendar. And this, I think, is strictly according to form.
Yep, it follows the forms that we have in place. The only items I would draw your attention to are September 11th and October 9th, two Tuesday meetings of the Board of Education because of, obviously, the Mondays that fall ahead being impacted by the school calendar.
Right, so in other words, it's the second and the fourth Monday, except if that Monday, if either one of those Mondays is a holiday, then it gets kicked over to Tuesday.
Yep.
All right, is there a motion to approve the Board of Education meeting schedule?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and then 9.3 is act on the Operations, Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment and Policy Committee meeting calendar drafts as reflected in Exhibit 9.3. Now, keeping in mind the committees are always free to set their own schedules, but we do this just so that there is at least a plan. But is there a motion to approve these meetings?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, I guess this would be a good place in the minutes to just reflect also that I've made committee appointments, and I've got these written down, and so you don't have to write these, but to the Operations Committee will be Ms. Rader, Mr. Sands, Ms. Cohen, Ms. Balistraci, Mr. Kazin. Policy will be Ms. Best, Ms. Balistraci, Mr. Kazin, Mr. Baglio, and Ms. Sullivan. Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment would be Ms. Sullivan, Ms. Cohen, Ms. Rader, Ms. Best, and Mr. Baglio. Transportation would be Mr. Sands and Ms. Sullivan, and I will be ex officio on each of these committees. So, and I'll give you the list. Okay. All right. So, any committee reports? 10.1 would be Policy Committee.
The Policy Committee met last month. We discussed a number of things. So we are in the process of incorporating a new policy and regulation titled Aaron's Law, or reflective of Aaron's Law, which is a sexual abuse prevention and education program. We actually have a special meeting next Monday, the 18th, which has been posted, special policy meeting to finish looking at that. We are also paying attention to and reviewing some updates to attendance and truancy, to a non-discrimination policy, and a homeless students policy. So we are in the middle of reviewing several regulations and/or policies, and we'll be bringing them to the board when we are finished and ready for a vote.
Okay, great. Operations Committee, I should note, the Operations Committee met before this meeting and elected Ms. Cohen and Mr. Sands as co-chairs. That's something we haven't done before in terms of a model, but it seems like one that will make sense and that will work, and so we're glad that we have two new chairs of that committee, and I guess I'd ask if you have a report, either one of you.
I mean, we discussed, obviously, the warrants and expenditures as discussed a little bit earlier in this meeting, and discussed a little bit about the budget process, which Dr. Freeman just reported on here, and met with our consultant from Lindbergh and Ripple to discuss insurance and medical claims to date. So we'll take a look more at that as we go through the budget process. And there is a winter community dinner coming up. I think that's in January, although we didn't get a chance to really discuss that, so everybody can be on the lookout for that invite, I'm assuming, right? Do we have a date on that yet, or?
On the paper.
No, and I checked I'm sure it'll be up on the website as soon as one is secured, so. Okay.
Thank you for reminding me. The date's not on here. I don't have the date. We'll get that out to everybody.
I'm sure it will be, everybody will be invited.
Menu, but not the
Yes.
That's very useful.
But the last one is,
The menu isn't that much,
the last one was great, so I'd encourage everybody to be on the lookout and attend.
Anything, Mr. Sands, anything? from us?
Well, and we also had an update on the facilities projects, and there's lots going on there, but we're not quite to the decision point on a couple of things.
Okay.
A lot of work.
Okay, and then 10.3 is Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment Committee. That hasn't met since the new board meets January. And what's the topic going to be?
Well, science is the big topic. Also, the follow-up from our November vertical professional development, particularly responding to concerns around world language.
Okay.
So those two things are on the agenda.
Okay.
I'm happy to share that the next community dinner will take place on January 11th from 6 to 8 p.m. here at the high school. Winter is the theme, and students will have the opportunity to decorate their own snowflakes.
That's great. We'll be looking forward
And
to
entertainment will be provided by High School Voices.
that. That's great. That actually is great.
Yeah, that's
good with the
good.
voices, the snowflakes. I can really.
You don't have to decorate a snowflake. It's an option.
There are no snowflakes out there.
Yeah, well. All right, town committee liaisons, are there, I mean, we do have to set some liaisons as moving forward. There was, what is it, the wellness committee, the pension committee, the standing building committee,
Standing
land
fields.
acquisition. I'm sorry?
Standing fields.
Standing fields. So there are some, I guess I'll shoot an email out to people and those who feel inclined to volunteer for one of those liaisons. Probably the most time-consuming one is standing building, I would guess.
I think so.
Yeah, and so anyway, but we can talk about that moving forward. And then the Learn Board of Directors also is another liaison. What did we decide on that? I just asked for volunteers, and I think I didn't get any volunteers. Did somebody?
I think it's just such a challenge with the time of day that they
Right.
meet. That's
We may
the
have to
issue.
try to rotate that, right,
Yeah.
among the
Yeah,
board
we
members,
can do
right?
that.
And-
I think
and
that's good.
Maybe we can you get a schedule of when the
a good
meetings
idea.
are?
Absolutely.
It
Maybe
is.
we can
We'll
just
get
circulate that and
Right.
sign
It's
up.
on Thursday mornings
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
In Old Lyme.
so there may be some that can't do that
Sure.
because of work commitments.
Right. But with some notice, maybe.
Right, and once a month, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if it's once or twice a year for
Right.
any individual board member.
Yeah.
Should be okay.
That'd be better.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll work on that. Anything else on the board agenda or committee reports? Don't get used to this, Mr. Baglio. This is not.
I was going to say, we're on record pace here.
Yeah, we don't have an executive session.
You trust me.
Yeah.
We'll make up for it in the budget.
Remember this later in the year.
Item 11, public questions. Anybody? Okay, please, coming up, just give us your name and address and.
Hello. My name is Valerie Ferrucci. I live on 1595 Little Meadow Road. I have 2 children, one at Guilford Lakes Elementary and one in preschool. I'm just here I know there's a task force already in place. I'm very pleased about that. I came to just support the late start times. And hopefully it'll get implemented. I know you guys have this tight schedule and you're meeting every week. I hope that it will get implemented in the next school year, 2018. I also wanted to ask, the last meeting I was at, there were a lot of parents that spoke about full-time art, and I didn't hear that mentioned at all, and I wanted to know where that stands.
Well, it would be part of the budget process, and so it's certainly something that the administration is going to make a recommendation to the board to either include additional art resources within the next budget or not, and then regardless of what the administration recommends, the board can vote whatever we think is appropriate. But I think we've tried very hard as a board not to look at things separately and tried to look at the whole package. There are a lot of variables, obviously, with the entire budget, and so I think we'll consider that as part of the budget process. I'd encourage anybody who wants to advocate for that to come to the budget meetings in the January 22nd and January 23rd of 2018 at the Adams Chorus Room.
Okay.
Right. So any proposed increases or reductions to things like art, music, technology instruction, any proposed increases or reductions to the extracurricular programming, those would all be presented for the first time in our administrative draft, which will be presented on January 8th, I believe I said. And then, as we noted, community has a chance to say, that's great, we're glad that's in there, please keep it there, or please pull something out, or please add something we didn't hear. Those happen at the public hearings.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other public questions? Anybody else? Please.
Very quick question for board members, particularly, I guess, the newer ones. Any change obviously requires planning and preparation, and when it's a school board-related change, requires lots of input, understanding, and feedback from all the constituencies, including town members. I'm wondering if any of you board members has yet had a chance to inquire about timing and scheduling for the research and conversation around changing the high school start times, to get an idea of whether or not we might be on track to make some sort of decision about that in time for this budget, or if it might end up going again to a later year, which would basically mean no change.
Well, I mean, it would really depend. I'm on the task force for school start times, and it would really depend on the types of options that are on the table for us, which at this point, we're looking at all options, but certain options would certainly take longer to implement than others. But might be more viable solutions to the problem. So it really will depend where we net out with that.
So how does that work with respect to any sort of schedule or timing or process to try to get to a point in time for this budget year to know whether or not something's going to be attempted?
An important piece of that is going to be transportation costs. It's a really
That's
big piece of the puzzle.
fundamental piece, right.
And right now, our transportation is out for bid.
Sorry, I'm not, I apologize if I'm not asking whether or not it's going to happen. I'm asking if there's sort of a timeline for research so that a decision can be made in time for.
And we're meeting weekly and that's sort of a front-loaded process, but a lot of that will hinge on the bid we get back from the transportation companies, which will be in the first week of January.
Just to clarify, when you say research, do you mean figuring out and getting a sense of who supports and who does not support some
And budget
change?
and
okay.
all the other considerations that need to go into a decision.
So in my mind, the January meetings are very important, the public forums, because similar to when we had the kindergarten, full-day kindergarten issue, we had an actual visual of who's interested, who supports, who doesn't support. The complication to me is that we don't have a specific plan, so it's hard to figure out. I think many people support it. The ones that may not support it are possibly because they don't know what to or not support.
Sorry if I missed it. Is there an expected timing on getting an idea back from transportation, or do they have to be given something first?
We expect something back the first week in January, so
Okay.
we'll have a better idea of what we can look at with respect to
Thanks.
to the options. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
We don't have an executive session yet.
We don't have an executive session?
We're all a little puzzled.
I feel like we're at
A little unsettled here in the board.
cards here. Just for the record, I want to note that we did meet for 4 hours
Yes,
on
there was a long
Saturday,
Saturday
and so
leading into this.
we did spend some time there. And also, just for the record, yes, just for the record, we have a lot coming, so I don't feel bad about entertaining a motion to adjourn. Is that what I heard? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.